And we're going to take another moment here as we switch our guests in the chair. We're joined now by Roger Schlesinger. He is known in most circles as the Mortgage Minute Guy. Roger, always good to see you.
Good to see you, Don. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, too. It's been since last year, since I last saw you.
That's right.
Now, of course, you know, whenever we have you on the program, we talk about all kinds of different things. But, of course, first and foremost, you are the Mortgage Minute Guy. You are helping people either find their home, get the mortgaging from their home, refinance their home. What's the latest? Because there's been a lot going on, but what's the latest? We have a new Fed chair. We've got a lot of things that are happening in the financial world. Where do you see it from your perspective?
Well, I see two things. Number one is that if we don't do something about the deficit spending in this country fairly quickly, we're not going to have a country to worry about after that, because it is really getting out of hand. Just recently, they announced that we took an extra $12 billion over the last couple of months from China, bringing our total up to $1.3 trillion. But that's not the bad part. The bad part to me is that we owe Brazil $250 billion. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
We owe the Caribbean countries money. In fact, instead of, where's Waldo, we have to get a new game. What country don't we owe? It is so out of hand. And what do I hear from both sides in Congress? Well, I think we can get together and save $1 billion over the next 10 years.
I know. Here we have a $1.7 trillion deficit, or national debt, excuse me, and they got all excited over an $85 billion sequester.
Yeah.
And every time they didn't have money for this or money for that, they blamed it on this $85 billion, which amounted to not even a drop in the bucket.
No. And here's the bad part, and here's the part that I think people have to realize. This idea that we're going to start tapering, but we're going to keep the interest rates at zero. They have to keep the interest rates at zero, because we're at 17 trillion and going towards 18 trillion right now in national debt. And if this interest rate gets to normally around 5%, we're going to have $1 trillion a year in interest payments.
I know. Well, we're basically dropping about $1.2 trillion per year more than we're taking in.
Right.
Now, Harry Reid says he has a solution. Let's just raise taxes by $1.2 trillion, which they may try to do. And at that point, they're going to say, guess what? We balanced the budget.
Not exactly, because if they do raise $1.2 trillion, they will have spending bills of $2.4 trillion.
Of course.
So we'll still be $1.2 trillion.
We've said that many, many times.
Yes,
I mean, the government does not tax for the money it needs; it finds need for the money it gets.
Right.
Thank you, Ronald Reagan, for that quote.
Also, people forget about Harry Reid. The man has been a civil servant all his life and is worth somewhere between $7 million and $7 billion. And how do you do that as a civil servant? I don't know. But one of the things that you forgot is he was the author and I think the controller of the funds of the bullet train from Los Angeles to Vegas, of which we gave him $8 billion.
Yeah.
Where did that money go?
Well, interestingly enough, we talk about these bullet trains, these high-speed rails. I moved to California in 1982. They were talking about high-speed rail in 1982. We're no closer to it today than we were then.
Well, I'll tell you why. Because when I got out of college, which was before then, and I don't want to exactly tell the date I got out of college, I actually had an idea that maybe I could put something like that together with my grandiose ideas. And I started talking to railroad companies, et cetera. And the reason you can't put it together is it doesn't pencil. You can't get a train big enough to go fast enough, because obviously you have to go up steep hills to get to the desert, and then it's a quick trip. It'll never pencil. It just can't pencil.
Now, which Roosevelt was president when you were trying to do that? Now, let's talk about something.
Teddy Roosevelt's father.
Now, you've written a book. It's called 15 Years of Plenty. I'm assuming this is not a gardening book.
It is not a gardening book.
Tell us about 15 Years of Plenty.
Our Plenty. The 15 Years of Plenty is my philosophy that the difference between cheap and inexpensive is completely lost in the mortgage industry. People say, I like the 30-year fix because the payment is inexpensive. No, it's cheap. It is not inexpensive. And the reason for this is that a payment is made up of principal and interest. In a 30-year loan, principal is the greater part of the first payment. Interest is the greater part of the first payment. Principal is a very small part. How long do you think it takes on a monthly or yearly basis for just principal and interest to equal each other, not for principal to be better than, but just equal.
On a 30-year mortgage?
Yeah.
I'll guesstimate 10 years.
14.
14 years.
14 years.
Wow.
You will be making payments at this, what you call inexpensive and I call cheap mortgage, that you are making a minority payment every time.
You're paying rent.
You're paying rent, exactly. A 15-year loan has the majority of it as principal from day one, pays off half of it in just about 8 years, and in 15 years, it's all gone. So why would you want to take a payment for 14 years that you're still paying mainly interest, not principal, instead of one that pays off entirely in 15 years?
Well, I think it's become a mentality of people in the 21st century. I mean, they go into a car dealer and they don't think about how much car they want to buy. They think about what payment can I afford.
Exactly what
and
it
then
is.
the dealer tells them what car they can have.
Okay.
And they're stretching those payments out to 5, 6, 7 years. And that's probably what they're doing when they're buying a home. They say, well, if I can afford $1,800 a month mortgage payment, how much home can I get? Well, if you go 30 years, or in some cases now 40 years, this is what you can do.
Yeah, here's the problem. The guys who take 15-year loans, pay it off in 15 years, and then they have all that money, that payment, for another 15 years while their friends are struggling,
Right.
and they are becoming wealthy.
Mm-hmm.
And the government, and if they want to sell, the government is saying to you, if you're married, we'll give you a $500,000 exclusion from your profit. If you're not, we'll give you $250,000. So they pay off their house. The house doesn't even have to go up in value.
Right.
You've written it off, and you don't have to recapture it. There's nowhere else in the United States can you do that with anything else. Write off the payment and then not have to recapture it because you either have $250,000 or $500,000 in exclusion from profit. So it's a gift from the government, and nobody can understand it, and nobody seems to look at it. On the other hand, the people who have 30-year loans, they are so ripe for someone to tell them, hey, I can save you some money, because that's the big thing. I can save you some money.
Right.
They start again. They spend their whole life paying off a 30-year mortgage that they never pay off.
Well, you know, we have just about 45 seconds left here, but I know I could go on for hours with you because it's really an education. People that are watching and listening to us right now, they say, gee, I'd like some of that Roger Schlesinger education. If they want more information, how can they get in touch with you?
They can call us at 866-288-0088, or they can go to mortgageminuteguy.com, or they can call amazon.com and buy the book.
Well, there you go. Roger Schlesinger, the Mortgage Minute Guy. Again, the website is mortgageminuteguy.com. The book is 15 Years of Plenty. Excellent reading. Roger, thanks so much.
Thank you, Don.